Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, 4 presidents in New York City. President Biden raising record funds with former President Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. That says former President Trump attends the funeral of a slain NYPD officer. Iris Tao standing by in Manhattan. In Georgia, Trump's attorney argues that the indictment should be dismissed because the allegations violate the First Amendment. How is the judge reacting? Legal correspondent Arlene Richards joins us to discuss. The aftermath of the deadly Baltimore bridge collapse. Focus is now shifting to reopening the 9th busiest port in the country. Luis Martinez has the latest in the ongoing investigation. 25 years. That's the prison sentence for Sam Bankman-Fried. This after he was convicted of stealing billions of dollars from customers of his FTX cryptocurrency exchange. Does Russia plan to attack NATO countries? President Vladimir Putin responds. This as Russia now claims it has evidence that Ukraine financed the terrorists who killed over 140 people at a concert hall in Moscow. Jason Perry reports.
This is NTD Evening News. Live from our NTD Global Headquarters in New York City, here is Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening and thank you for joining us tonight. All eyes on New York. President Biden raising funds in the Democratic stronghold as former President Trump attends the funeral of a fallen NYPD officer. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao, who's on the ground in New York City. Good evening, Iris. Tell us about Biden's fundraiser there today.
Good evening to you, Tiff. So right now, President Biden is inside Radio City Music Hall right behind us for a fundraiser tonight as he's teaming up with former Presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. And Biden's campaign saying that tonight's campaign event will be one of the most successful and lucrative ones in history. They're expecting to raise over $25 million from this event tonight alone. And while this event also comes as Biden is seeking to demonstrate his widening cash edge over Trump, and also comes as Biden's increasingly relying on former President Obama to boost his campaign. Obama was just at the White House last week. Meanwhile, Trump's campaign is also trying to raise money off Biden's event tonight, sending out several emails warning that, quote, Obama is back. And right now, as you can hear, Tiff, a lot of pro-Palestinian protesters are protesting right outside of the event venue here and chanting slogans like Genocide Joe has got to go and that President Biden is not welcomed here, and that's in protest of President Biden's handling of the war in Gaza. Tiff.
And Iris, former President Trump is also in New York today. Tell us more about why he's there as well and what he's saying.
Right, so former President Trump was earlier this afternoon in Long Island, New York, as he was invited to attend the wake of a slain NYPD officer whose name is Jonathan Dillard, who was killed on Monday because during a traffic stop, and he is the father of a 1-year-old son. And Trump, after paying respect today, was calling for more law and order. Watch.
We have to get back to law and order. We have to do a lot of things differently because this is not working. This is happening too often.
The White House says that President Biden also spoke with New York City Mayor Adams to offer his condolences about this tragic incident. And while former President Trump is trying to highlight what he calls a worsening, escalating crime problem across some cities, and President Biden just less than 10 days ago was highlighting and touting what he called a record decrease in crime last year. Tiff.
Iris, thank you for that update. Former President Trump's attorney is in a Georgia court today arguing that the sprawling RICO case must be dismissed. He says the allegations violate the First Amendment. We turn now to our legal correspondent Arlene Richards for more details. Arlene, what are Trump's arguments regarding the First Amendment?
So they're basically saying that all of the activities that he's being charged for in the indictment were part of statements that he made about the election. And because they were statements that he made about the election, it is political speech and it is protected by the First Amendment. And that includes conversations he had with Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, as well as statements that he made about the election being stolen. Now, they say even if those statements were false, the First Amendment still protects him because it was political speech and it was about the election. Now, they make the point that the Georgia statute actually makes it a crime for any false statements that you say. They don't distinguish about where it happened, when it happened, or why it was done. They just, everything is a crime. But they said under the Constitution, he is protected by political speech.
And how does the prosecution respond to those arguments?
Well, of course, they're saying it's not political speech. It's speech that was in furtherance of criminal activity. They say that this speech is not protected under the First Amendment, and that he actually, even though there were false statements, they were false statements against the government. And when it's false statements against the government, it has a higher standard.
And what's your sense of how the judge is leaning, and where does the case stand now?
Well, I think the judge is a little skeptical of the Trump attorney's arguments, so let's watch a clip on that.
And your argument is that this is core political speech.
Correct.
So some crimes can be achieved solely through speech, though. Terroristic threats,
Crime,
solicitation. Why is that not what's happening here, as alleged?
So actually, the judge denied two former motions that were filed by Sidney Powell and Ken Chesebro before they pled out of the case. And at that time, he said that there wasn't enough evidence for him to make a determination and that they should raise these arguments at the time of trial. Now, as far as the case is concerned, there isn't a trial date yet, but DA Fani Willis did request or suggest an August date. However, she did say that she was willing to be flexible because she understands that Trump has these other cases and she wants to be respectful to the other tribunals. Now, there's also this appeal of the disqualification rule, which is how she is still on the case. And the attorneys are saying that they don't think this case will go forward before the election.
Arlene, thank you for that report.
Thank you.
A former election lawyer for Trump and a former Trump Justice Department official, both facing potential disbarment, meaning they could be stripped of their license to practice law. This stems from their efforts to challenge the results of the 2020 presidential election.
In Washington, D.C., the disciplinary hearing for former Justice Department official Jeffrey Clark entered day 3 on Thursday. D.C. bar authorities charged Clark with attempted dishonesty and attempted serious interference with the administration of justice. He faces sanctions and potential disbarment. At issue is a letter Clark drafted in the aftermath of the 2020 presidential election. It said the DOJ was investigating various irregularities in Georgia and had identified significant concerns that may have impacted the election. Clark allegedly tried to persuade his superiors to send the letter to Georgia. Trump ultimately rejected the letter, and it wasn't made public until the Biden presidency. The D.C. Bar Disciplinary Council argued that Clark's action was, quote, essentially a coup of the Department of Justice. Clark's attorney argued that the charges are unfounded because the letter was merely a drafted proposal. The trial, which has daily hearings, is expected to last 1 to 2 weeks. Meanwhile, in California, a state bar court judge recommended on Wednesday that attorney John Eastman be disbarred and be fined $10,000. Eastman represented Trump during his efforts to challenge the 2020 election. The judge found Eastman culpable on 10 counts of misconduct over his role. The judge's opinion serves as a recommendation to the California Supreme Court, which will decide whether Eastman should lose his state law license. Eastman's attorney said in a statement Wednesday that Eastman's work was based on reliable legal precedent, prior presidential elections, research of constitutional text, and extensive scholarly material. The attorney called the recommendation unfair and said they will appeal to the review court. Both Clark and Eastman are Trump's co-defendants in the Georgia RICO case. Reporting by Allison Lee, NTD News.
Clark maintains his innocence and says he's the target of a political takedown and the victim of a weaponized justice system. He also defended Eastman, saying he's a good, honorable man, and called the California judgment a, quote, affront to justice in America, and more importantly, it is part of a one-party Marxist takeover. This comes as other lawyers in Trump's orbit are also facing legal action related to the 2020 election. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s independent presidential bid got a recent cash injection after the announcement of his running mate. A super PAC supporting the candidate says it raked in over $2 million after Kennedy chose attorney and entrepreneur Nicole Shanahan. The head of the American Values 2024 Super PAC, Tony Leons, told The Hill that donors were clearly energized by the selection of Shanahan. 38-year-old Shanahan is a California lawyer and philanthropist. She has never held elected office. The attorney leads the Baya Echo Foundation. It's an organization she founded to fund issues like women's reproductive science, criminal justice reform, and environmental causes. Maryland is requesting $60 million from the federal government. This is to cover the initial costs associated with Tuesday's collapse of the Key Bridge in Baltimore. NTD's Luis Martinez has details.
Yes, those $60 million requested by Governor Wes Moore will be used for the immediate efforts to remove the debris from the Baltimore harbor and open that waterway, as of course any immediate cost to divert traffic around the city. We also do know that over 1,000 Army Engineer Corps personnel are arriving on scene, as well as specialized cranes and barges with over 1,000-ton lift capacity will be arriving today to start moving the superstructure over the cargo ship Dolly and the Baltimore harbor. Let's listen to what Jennifer Homendy, the National Transportation Safety Board chair, had to say about the bridge, the structure itself.
The bridge is fracture critical. It's a fracture critical bridge. What that means is if a member fails, that would likely cause a portion of or the entire bridge to collapse. There's no redundancy. The preferred method for building bridges today is that there is redundancy built in, whether that's transmitting loads to another member or some sort of structural redundancy. This bridge did not have redundancy.
There are over 17,000 fracture-critical bridges across the United States from a total 700,000 bridges. So it will be interesting to see what the National Transportation Safety Board recommends to safeguard these bridges. It's also important to mention that once the bridge collapsed over the cargo ship Dolly, it breached over 56 containers that had hazardous materials, over 700 tons of hazardous materials. So, of course, there is a strong priority to clean up these containers and remove any debris from the Baltimore harbor. Let's listen to what Senator Van Hollen, the Democrat from Maryland, had to say about the operations.
The fact that the Port of Baltimore is one of the busiest ports in America, the biggest port for cars unloading and offloading, thousands and thousands of workers directly employed there, and then tens of thousands more whose livelihood depends on it. So opening the channel is the priority.
The National Transportation Safety Board said that the investigation would take approximately between 12 and 24 months. So it'll be a long way before we know what exactly happened. And it'll also be several months before there is a clear path through the Baltimore harbor that will, of course, be economic disruption to the Northeast economy. Back to you.
Police say a man stabbed and killed 4 people at multiple locations around Rockford, Illinois yesterday. Authorities say the suspect also wounded 7 people and is now in police custody. The 4 victims range in age from 15 years old to 63. A county sheriff said officials responded to a reported home invasion report after 1 p.m. The sheriff said one of the dead victims was a mailman. Police say the suspect is 22 years old and don't believe any other suspects are at large. Officials are still trying to determine a motive. Rockford's mayor called the attack a random and senseless act of violence. The city is roughly 90 miles west of Chicago. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Sam Bankman-Fried has been sentenced to 25 years in prison. This after stealing an estimated $8 billion from customers of his crypto exchange. NTD's Virginia Gibson has more.
Sam Bankman-Fried was sentenced to 25 years in prison Thursday. He was convicted of defrauding customers of his crypto exchange, FTX, of around $8 billion. He also faces $11 billion in financial penalties. Judge Lewis Kaplan said he weighed Bankman-Fried's brazenness, lack of remorse, and potential for committing future crimes.
25 years is not insignificant, and I do think will be a heck of a deterrent to people.
Attorney Jim Baer called the verdict respectable based on all the factors involved.
You have to look at a variety of factors. You've got a first-time offense. You have intentionality. Was he, literally trying to steal the money? Was it more negligence, recklessness?
Prosecutors wanted up to 50 years. They said Bankman-Fried committed one of the greatest financial frauds in U.S. history and used the stolen money to fund his lavish lifestyle. Bankman-Fried's defense wanted no more than 6.5 years. They said he was just a math nerd who went too far.
I also honestly don't think that he will stay there for the entirety of the verdict. He can qualify for jail credit based on good behavior. He can go out earlier.
Attorney Nicole Bernecki says 15 to 50% of the prison sentence could be shaved off. Bankman-Fried could potentially spend 12.5 years in prison. Virginia Gibson, NTD News.
In his latest effort to boost China's failing economy, the Chinese regime leader is meeting with American CEOs. This as Beijing tries to win back foreign investors. NTD's Jack Bradley has more from the State Department.
Chinese Communist leader Xi Jinping is hosting American business leaders in Beijing. Now, it's the regime's latest effort to win back investors amid a wave of foreign divestment. Xi met with around 20 U.S. executives and academics on Wednesday, urging them to continue investing in China. Among the attendees were the heads of private equity firm Blackstone, FedEx, chip manufacturer Qualcomm, Brookfield Asset Management, and Bloomberg, as well as the founding dean of Harvard School of Government. But concerns continue over China's human rights violations. CCP has been, notorious for linking silence with human rights abuses on a trade relationship. How does the United States ensure that human rights is the foundation of these trade relationships with China?
So I will say that in all of our meetings with officials from the PRC, we make clear where we have concerns about China's human rights practices. We raise them consistently. That includes the Secretary when he has met with his counterparts, and that includes other officials from the U.S. government. Make very clear what we think about human rights in China and where we have deep concerns.
The meeting between Xi and the American businessman comes after a year of a worsening economy in China and a significant divestment of foreign funds, not to mention the country's failing real estate market, anti-espionage laws, exit bans, raids on U.S. firms, and U.S.-China tensions, all of which have investors fleeing. Foreign direct investment in China shrank nearly 20% compared to this time a year ago, and new foreign investment in the country dropped to a 30-year low last year. Xi even acknowledged the poor state of the Chinese economy in his New Year's Eve speech. He said businesses are struggling and job seekers are having trouble finding work. Xi Jinping is attempting to boost China's economy by focusing on manufacturing and domestic chip production, but many experts warn it won't be enough. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jack Bradley, NTD News.
The business community in New York is contemplating former President Trump's penalty in the civil fraud case. Joining us now is Epoch Times reporter Janice Heisel, who's been following the case. Janice Heisel, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
Thank you.
Now, Trump's bond was recently slashed down about 60% to $175 million. Some are calling this a win compared to the original $464 million, but it is still quite a lot of money. You have a new piece out titled New Yorkers Silently Warring Over Ramifications of Trump Ruling. Tell us about that. What is the business community worried about here?
Well, I've got to tell you, trying to pin down this story was quite a task because people were not wanting to go on the record. So we were able to get a professor from Indiana who has connections in New York to give us that scoop that we were looking for, which is that really very quietly behind the scenes, people are expressing a lot of concern that basically if they could do this to President Trump, could they be next? They are asking themselves this.
And why is there this silent worry? Why are they afraid of speaking out?
Well, because according to the professor I spoke to and also a couple of other sources, the business practices that were believed to be or decided to be fraudulent here actually are considered in the business community to be business as usual. They are always kind of negotiating about how much is a property worth. So the bank is going to say one thing, the people who are trying to get the loan from the bank are going to say another. So this is a very common practice. They negotiate, they hash it out. In the words of the professor, they hit each other over the head with dueling numbers, and then they come out at the end with a negotiation. And the court in this particular case said that that wasn't right, that for Trump to say that his properties were worth this much, and he got penalized for it. And they're just saying, wait a minute, this is the way it's always done. And even people who don't like Trump are saying this doesn't feel right to them, and they are concerned that they could be next.
Given those normal business practices, how was Trump's case handled differently?
Well, according to the professor I spoke to and a couple of other people, they were telling me that, normally any cases involving businesses go to the commercial division of the New York court system. And now this case, because it was brought in quite an unusual fashion by the AG, Attorney General Letitia James, it went a different route. It went to a judge who, according to the sources I spoke to, they don't think that he is aware of possibly how business is normally conducted in New York. And anyone who speaks out against this in the business community is just afraid they will be putting a target on their own back.
On that note, Tim Pool said recently, quote, the communists in New York are going after Trump, not just to go after Trump, but also to set the precedent that only the state can determine value. What are the impacts to the city itself, as in New York City?
The ramifications of this decision, if this is used as a precedent and does not get overturned, really could be far-reaching, could absolutely be devastating to the New York economy there. And there are a lot of people who, once again, are just very quietly behind the scenes telling us and telling others that they're very worried about how this will shake out in the end.
Janice Heisel, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us now, here's some of today's top headlines. Both President Biden and former President Trump are in New York City today. Biden will host his most high-profile fundraiser at Radio City Music Hall, and Trump attended the wake of a NYPD officer killed on duty. In an Atlanta court, lawyers for Trump argued that charges in the Georgia RICO case should be dismissed. They said that Trump's speech is protected by the First Amendment. But prosecutors argued that Trump's speech is criminal because he lied to the government. Disgraced financier Sam Bankman-Fried was sentenced to 25 years in prison for fraud and conspiracy. The co-founder of crypto exchange FTX said he will appeal his conviction and sentence. Authorities paused search efforts for the 4 remaining workers in the Baltimore bridge collapse due to unsafe conditions. This was while the military activated personnel to clean the debris and clear the shipping channel. Joining me now to dive into the economic impact of the bridge collapse is Jim Nels, supply chain consultant and economic analyst. Jim, thanks for joining us. Now, we're already seeing cargo ships waiting outside the port following the Baltimore bridge collapse. What's the impact here on supply chains? Where will these ships reroute to?
So that port deals with about $80 billion worth of commerce a year, which is $220 million per day. So what they're going to have to do is reroute those ships to places like the Port of New York and New Jersey, the Port of Norfolk, the Port of Savannah. It's going to take time, probably 6 to 8 weeks, to reroute everything and to get everything moving back again. So we're going to see a disruption of the supply chain. But these ports can handle the new challenges. It's just going to take a little bit of time.
Now, President Biden has indicated that he wants the federal government to pay to rebuild the bridge, as in taxpayers, rather than the ship's insurance firm. Now, estimates for the rebuild vary from weeks to years. What's your estimate and what the impact will be?
Well, this is insane, right? So they're saying right now it's going to take 2 to 5 years to rebuild that bridge. If we really wanted to do it, we could do it very, very quickly. We just would have to waive some of the permitting. We'd have to waive some of the ways that the government typically does things, which we could do. But again, when it comes back to the government doing this, I don't have an issue with the federal government paying for this. That is such an important route and such an important bridge. That is the one bridge that allows hazardous materials to go through the northeast corridor, either going into the northeast corridor or coming out of the northeast corridor, so that they can ship those hazardous materials. Without doing that, those hazardous materials have to go through Western Maryland, or Pete Buttigieg is going to have to waive the regulations and let them go through the tunnels, which I don't think he's apt to do.
On that note, Maryland's governor said for everybody who is buying cars, for everybody who is buying farm equipment, we're the largest port in the country that does that, adding so this is not just impacting Maryland. Now, with the rerouting, will we see an increase in prices? What will the impact be on consumers?
Yes, you're going to see an increase, at least in car prices. Again, as you mentioned, they're the largest port to import foreign-produced automobiles. Approximately 850,000 cars a year has come through that port. So that's going to add to the cost. In addition, every ship that was supposed to go to Baltimore is now going to have to go somewhere else. So that's going to add extra cost. And like we just talked about, every sort of hazardous material that's shipped, even gasoline and chemicals, are going to have to be rerouted. That's going to add time. That's going to add cost. So this will impact the inflation rate in the United States.
Given this is the 9th biggest port in the nation for international cargo, Cox Automotive, a market researcher, said that it expects the situation in Baltimore to have no material impact on vehicle sales in the United States. But what about the international markets? What impact will it have there?
Well, it will have an impact in the United States, in my opinion, but the impact is going to be on the price of cars. On the export piece, the biggest thing that's going to happen isn't necessarily with cars, but Baltimore is the second largest port to export coal to Europe. And that's going to hurt the European countries that can no longer receive energy from Russia because of the sanctions. So that's going to be a major impact to those countries.
Jim Nels, supply chain consultant and economic analyst, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Will Russia attack NATO countries after Ukraine? President Vladimir Putin responding to that accusation today. Plus, Moscow now says it has evidence that Kyiv financed the terrorists who launched the deadly concert hall attack. NTD's Jason Perry has the latest.
On Thursday, a Russian-attacked drone injured 2 people in a village in eastern Ukraine. According to a local official, the explosion damaged houses and started a fire.
It is good that at least the drone fell in the yard and we're alive. May God protect us in the future. It is just unbearable.
It was apparently part of a barrage of Russian-attacked drones, as the Ukrainian military on Thursday reported shooting down 26 of 28 drones overnight. And just the day before, a Russian bomb hit this courtyard in Kharkiv in northeastern Ukraine.
It's just chance that we are alive. Someone was unlucky, someone was killed, someone has shrapnel wounds.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky was also in northeastern Ukraine on that same day, where he inspected military fortifications and met with troops.
Thank you for defending Ukraine, our sovereignty, and our territorial defense. I wish you and your families good health and victory. Our future depends on it.
Zelensky recently told CBS News that Russian President Vladimir Putin could attack NATO countries if the Russian army is not stopped. Putin on Thursday responded to those claims.
The U.S. defense spending is about 40% of the world's total defense spending. Russia accounts for 3.5%. So are we going to go to war with NATO with that kind of ratio? It's just nonsense.
But he said Russia will shoot down F-16s if they are supplied to Ukraine. And he added this.
Of course, if they are used from airfields in third countries, they become legitimate targets for us wherever they might be located.
Meanwhile, Russia's top investigative body said they have evidence that Ukraine financed the terrorist who recently killed over 140 people at a concert in Moscow. White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby did not comment directly on Russia's claim, but said this.
It's abundantly clear that ISIS was solely responsible for the horrific terrorist attack in Moscow last week. In fact, the United States tried to help prevent this terrorist attack, and the Kremlin knows this. In advance of the March 22nd attack, the United States government provided clear, detailed information to Russian authorities regarding the terrorist threat against large gatherings and concerts in Moscow.
Also this week, a Moscow court gave a ruling on Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, who Russia claims is a spy. He's been in Russian prison for about 1 year now. The court decided to keep Gershkovich in jail for 3 more months before his trial starts, which could begin on June 30th. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov did not comment on a possible prisoner exchange for Gershkovich and said that complete silence on the matter was essential. Jason Perry, NTD News.
Immigration into the U.S. reportedly rising much faster than the Biden administration expected. A new report shows we've already reached numbers the government projected would be seeing decades down the road. NTD's Ariane Polestar has more on the ongoing crisis.
The Center for Immigration Studies published a new report on Thursday. It shows that the total number of immigrants in the U.S. now stands at over 50 million. That's 15.5% of the total population. Now that's significant because just in November, the Biden administration projected that this 15.5% mark would only be reached in 2039. The center estimates that 25% of all immigrants, almost 13 million, are in the U.S. illegally. The report states that the most recent influx under Biden has implications for nearly every aspect of American society, including public coffers, the labor market, schools, hospitals, and the balance of political power. And we've already seen this impact in cities across the U.S.
This issue will destroy New York City.
Earlier this month, I spoke with Todd Bensman, a senior fellow with the Center for Immigration Studies. He then said that some towns near Mexico have already seen some of the implications outlined in this new report.
You know, if they feel sick or they have a problem or cancer or whatever it is, we'll go straight into the local hospitals. They don't have insurance, and, you know, hospital systems have to pay for that.
Even if it's a serious illness such as cancer?
They're paying for everything. Yeah,
Really?
Everything.
Bensman says none of the waves we've seen before can be compared to the masses of immigrants coming to the U.S. now.
These are just volcanic eruptions of humanity that far exceed anything that anybody down here has ever seen or experienced before, and also for the most prolonged period of time, years, 3 years of it straight.
At present, the number of immigrants in the U.S. is higher than at any point in history. The center expects the total number to rise to 60 million after a possible second Biden term. Ariane Pastar, NTD News.
It's official. The impeachment trial of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas will head to the Senate on April 11th. On that date, senators will be sworn in as jurors, according to a statement from Majority Leader Chuck Schumer's office. Senate President Pro Temp Patty Murray will preside over the matter. Mayorkas was impeached by the House last month by a slight margin, making him the first cabinet secretary to be impeached in nearly half a century. He faces 2 counts, failing to comply with and enforce existing law and a breach of public trust. House Speaker Mike Johnson said Mayorkas' handling of the southern border justifies a removal from office, but the Democrat-controlled Senate is unlikely to convict him. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, the Sweet 16 starts tonight, but let's begin with baseball, where today is opening day and nearly every team is in action. Now, looking ahead, what teams are the betting favorites to win it all this year?
Well, the Dodgers are the odds makers' favorite, you know. I would guess they were already in the conversation for number one before they signed Shohei Ohtani for $700 million and that star Japanese pitcher for another $325 million. I mean, imagine what the odds would be next year when Ohtani is actually healthy and can pitch. Now, right behind them are the Braves, who won it 3 years ago, followed by Houston, who won it 2 years ago, and then the Yankees. Now, I'm a little surprised the Yankees are this high, especially having to put their ace pitcher Garrett Cole on the 60-day injured list. I mean, he's not only their best pitcher, he might be the best in the game. Now, behind them, finally, are the reigning champion Texas Rangers. It seems kind of low if you ask me. But anyway, after them are the Baltimore Orioles, who had the most wins in the American League last year. Meanwhile, the New York Mets, who have the highest payroll game at $340 million, aren't even among the top 6. So from the odds makers' perspective, they don't really have much confidence in how they spent that money.
Now, there is one contender that you didn't mention, the Tampa Bay Rays, who are still waiting on a resolution for All-Star Wander Franco, who's under investigation for an improper relationship. What's his status?
You know, he's back on paid administrative leave through at least June 1st. Now, it can be extended again if his case isn't resolved by that time, which very well could be the case. Now, Franco, if you remember, was under investigation for allegations of having a relationship with a 14-year-old girl. Prosecutors allege he broke sexual exploitation and money laundering laws. Now, he's yet to be charged, though. Back in January, prosecutors were given 6 months to present any accusations, so his leave could very well be extended. Now, Franco, I mean, he's one of the best players in the game, and this all started last summer. He was placed on the administrative leave at that time. But up until that time, he was probably right behind Shohei Ohtani in the MVP race, and he's only 23 years old. So from a baseball perspective, this is a huge loss for Tampa Bay.
Switching gears a bit here, there was an anonymous survey done by the BBC that showed more than 70% of British sportswomen felt uncomfortable with transgender athletes competing in female sports, while 67% felt uncomfortable speaking publicly about the issue. You've talked with a number of American women about this very issue. Do these results ring true here as well?
Yes, and every time I talk with one of these athletes, I ask them, what is the consensus among, other female athletes, because of course they know plenty of other female athletes. And what they say backs up these results. Most every female athlete does not feel comfortable competing against transgender athletes, or also known as biological males, let alone sharing a locker room with them. But of course, they fear talking about it in public for fear of being labeled, a bigot or something like that. Now, I know you saw also that paper published in the Scandinavian Journal of Medicine by 26 academics that challenged the IOC's reasoning for including transgender athletes in women's Olympic sports, saying you have to consider male development rather than testosterone levels. In other words, if you've already gone through male puberty, lowering your testosterone levels afterwards doesn't reverse that. I mean, look at swimmer Leah Thomas, formerly known as Will, was ranked in the 500s in the men's swimming divisions as a male, switched to female, and she won an NCAA championship. So I don't think it's a coincidence that these issues aren't happening in men's sports.
Well, March Madness continues tonight with 4 more games. Who do you have winning?
Well, full disclosure, my bracket is a total mess right now through just 2 rounds. But I've got some bold predictions for tonight. I have very strong opinions. In the first game, I think Arizona should really roll over Clemson out in LA. I'm also going with top-seeded North Carolina to beat Alabama in the second matchup out west. Then in the East region, I think those will be the best 2 games, actually. Illinois versus Iowa State, that's our regional rivalry. I'm picking the Cyclones in a close one there. And then it's number 1 and defending champion UConn against San Diego State. Now, I'm picking the Aztecs to win in a huge upset here. Now, remember, UConn actually beat San Diego State in the title game last year. This is a rematch. You never forget who ended your season, especially if it was in the title game. Now, it's not going to be easy, though, because, of course, this game is played in nearby Boston, so UConn should have plenty of fans there. But I think San Diego State is going to be motivated for the upset.
Well, Dave, as always, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tiff.
Driving in Manhattan is about to get a lot more expensive. The Metropolitan Transportation Authority Board approved the toll rates for the borough's congestion pricing program. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the plan, the first of its kind in the U.S.
Starting in mid-June, New York City will charge a daily toll of $15 during the day for passenger vehicles driving in Manhattan south of 60th Street. It will charge up to $36 for larger trucks and buses.
New York has more traffic than any place in the United States, and now we're doing something about it.
The CEO of the Metropolitan Transportation Authority called it a huge day for the region.
When I came in as the MTA chair, one of the things that we agreed upon is we were going to try to do the big stuff and the hard stuff.
The plan still faces a number of legal challenges, including from the state of New Jersey. This local driver says no one can afford it.
It's a lot of money. So they want us to drive. I'm asthmatic. I don't want to be on a train. It's not healthy for me. So that's why I choose to drive.
This food vendor who drives his cart into Midtown Manhattan every day says the new toll rates will put his business in danger.
Now everything go up. Food goes up. Okay, lettuce, tomato, whatever I buy, everything go up. And people don't want to spend so much money. They want a good deal.
The small business owner says the new rates are good for no one but the city. New York says more than 900,000 vehicles enter the Manhattan Central Business District daily, with travel speeds reduced to around 7 miles an hour. The city says the charge will cut traffic by 17% and improve air quality. Officials say it will also generate $1 to $1.5 billion a year. Passenger vehicle drivers who enter at night will pay $3.75, while motorcycle riders will pay up to $7.50 to enter the area. Drivers will only be charged once per day. Taxi users will pay a $1.25 surcharge, while Uber and Lyft users will pay $2.50 per trip in the congestion zone. Those fees are in addition to New York's $2.50 congestion charge for taxis and $2.75 for for-hire vehicles in place since 2019. Lower-income vehicle owners may qualify for 50% discounts for some trips or for New York State tax credits under the plan. New York City is set to follow London, which implemented a similar charge in 2003. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Also in the Big Apple, the New York Auto Show opens tomorrow. NTD's Chris Spears was at the press preview, speaking with dealers and experts.
The New York Auto Show predates mass auto manufacturing itself. Founded in 1900, the show has played a pivotal role in both popularizing and advancing the auto industry. Let's take a look at some of the most recent models. Standing behind me is the new electric SUV coupe, the Polestar 4. What's unique about this vehicle is that there's no rear view window. Instead, you have a rear view camera that allows you to see a little bit more of what's behind you as you move. Here's what the company's PR manager has to say about the vehicle.
All new product in our lineup. 2024 is going to be a very exciting year for our brand with the launch of 3 and 4 coming to market. The U.S., North America, is a very SUV-friendly segment, right? It's a very, very popular car, good sales numbers in that segment. So we're very excited about what these two offerings bring for Polestar this year. So Polestar 4 features no back window. We utilize an HD camera in the back that then takes the space of where your rearview mirror would be is now a screen that portrays backwards.
I also spoke with automotive expert and vintage race car driver Lauren Fix for her take on the latest auto trends. The next thing I want to talk about, Lauren, is the latest car trends. We're here at the New York Auto Show 2024. What are you seeing this year?
Well, the big trend is SUVs and crossovers. That is more than 50% of the sales. Consumers like to have that, whether it be a hybrid propulsion or a gas. We're seeing a lot of companies like Hyundai came up with the new Santa Fe. It comes gas, it comes hybrid. There's no electric available in the U.S.
So we've talked about we've talked about the industry, but what are consumers most interested in this year?
I think the consumers want technology. You're seeing a lot of big screens that easy connectivity with your phone. From you're on the phone making a call and you get into your vehicle and it nicely transitions. You don't drop that call. Having navigation, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, Alexa, and Google are all built into these cars.
I asked Lauren to show us some of her favorite vehicles this year, the Genesis Magma line.
Starting with the GV60, this is the Magma concept, so it's an all-electric SUV, but if you look at it, it looks like a race car. It has cool carbon fiber bits, big tires, Recaro seats. Inside is so detailed with Magma stitching, Magma being orange. But this is something you're going to see on the streets. You can get a GV60 now with all the cool technology.
The New York Auto Show will be open to the public from March 29th to April 7th. Tickets are available at autoshowny.com. This is Chris Beers reporting for NTD News.
And that's all for today's news. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.